Yom Kippur knocks the arrogance out of all of us. This incredible day reminds us that you just can't lay out a grand scheme, plan each stage of life, and serenely count our blessings. The unforeseen arises, challenges overwhelm, the painful intrudes, and we know not even who will live and who will die. Randomness is unescapable, or inescapable is better. The question Yom Kippur poses, though, is, what are you going to do about that? Our Torah, our history provide stunning responses that sometimes we can emulate. Adam and Eve give birth to two sons, ecstatic joy. They lose them both. The Midrash comments that mom and dad were filled with despair and actually separated for a while. Somehow they found the courage to make love again and bring another child into the world. Eve called him Seth, which means gift, a true gift from God. Thousands of years later, Hasidic master Levi Yitzchak of Rodeph summoned the gumption to confront God. Today you judge all your creatures, great and small, the rabbi said. But I, Levi Yitzchak, proclaim it is you, God, who must be judged today. Your children are hungry. They are ill. They are persecuted. They are massacred. Where are you? Ours is not a religion that expects us to be stoic or passive, to suffer in silence. God challenges us as we challenge God precisely because we are needed to do together what neither of us can do alone. God does not dictate or direct the painful, tragic things that happen to us. They are inevitable, and yes, very often are random. God needs our courage, our strength, our protest, as we very much need God. Throughout history, we have responded to that call, and examples abound. The Nazis had been in power for 4 months when my beloved predecessor, Gunther Hirschberg, became bar mitzvah in a grand synagogue with more than 2,000 seats in the northwest section of Berlin. Rabbi Hirschberg remembers, as I stood on the bima of my synagogue chanting from the Torah, a group of stormtroopers goose-stepped by on the street singing songs of hate. I shall never forget that day. Somehow it seemed that even then there were two voices pitted against each other. The raucous sounds of violence, the sweet chants of the synagogue. It became very important to me that the Nazi voices be drowned out. I was completely hoarse by the time I finished reading the Torah. Rabbi Leo Beck led the Berlin Jewish community when in 1943 he was sent to the Theresienstadt concentration camp. That same year, the Vatican was approached to arrange a trade for Beck's safety, but he refused. He would not desert his people. In Theresienstadt, writes Beck, I was number 187894. I had only one thought, never to become a mere number, and always to keep my self-respect. Courage abounded after the war as well, the British denying certificates of entry into Palestine for barely alive survivors. And in the DP camps at Fahrenwald, 3,000 people organized protest meetings. A new Haggadah written and printed by American chaplain Rabbi Abe Klausner in 1946 courageously proclaimed, "God will bring us to the promised land." Miracle of miracles. Just 2 years later, the Jewish state was born. I've said this to you before, and it bears repeating. Our enemies have tried everything to wipe the Jewish people off the face of the earth. In a classic essay, Israel, the Ever-Dying People, Simon Rodeph wrote, "There is hardly a generation in the diaspora that did not consider itself the final link in Judaism's chain. Yet the Jewish people, greatly reduced in numbers, but not in resolve, continue to live." And think about this. Never in history has a people been kicked off its land and found the strength to reclaim that very land, and the people of Israel have done so 3 times. You can and we should wrestle with the thorny geopolitical issues that Israelis themselves wrestle with. But do not expect a people that has been denied its land from the year 70 to 1948 to imperil its survival in arguably the world's most unstable region. What makes the resurrection of the Jewish people and the Jewish homeland all the more incredible is the undeniable fact that country after country have slammed its doors in the face of our parents and grandparents fleeing Nazi savagery. Our country refused to even fill its quite paltry refugee quotas. Virulently anti-immigration Senator Robert Reynolds of North Carolina thundered, "If I had my way today, I would build a wall around the United States so high and so secure that not a single alien or foreign refugee from any country upon the face of the earth could possibly scale or ascend it." Sounds familiar. But we won't forget this. Our memory informs our values, our empathy towards those fleeing certain death and despair today. Listen to this number. In 2019, there are 25.9 million refugees worldwide, the highest number recorded since World War II, and double the total since 1912. Though Rodeph Sholom, as Rob mentioned, is doing its part in resettling refugees and doing a great job, there is no question that the United States has decreased the number of refugees welcomed more steeply than any other country. This administration has pretty much stopped letting in anyone from anywhere. And it's true that catastrophes like capsized boats once produced horror, now produce yawns of indifference. But we Jews remember the St. Louis and simply are forbidden to remain indifferent. Now, you might have thought that the greatest genocide in the history of humanity would make it unconscionable ever to see such anti-Semitic bigotry again. And you would be wrong. According to the ADL, the American Jewish community experienced near historic levels of anti-Semitic incidents in 2018. 52% of reported hate crimes this year have targeted Jews. The New York Times writes there have been 4 times as many crimes motivated by bias against Jews as there have been against blacks. And hate crimes against us have outnumbered those targeted at transgender people by a factor of 20. And how's this for irony? All this is happening at the same time that Americans love Jews more than any other religious group, according to the Pew Research Survey, and 74% of Americans have a favorable view of Israel. It's fascinating. It's anomalous. As you know, I have believed and still very much believe that America is qualitatively different than any other of our historic experiences. With our constitutional laws and protections and history, it is fitting for us to truly call America home. But that does not mean that we don't feel unsettled and even scared. Children all over this country are afraid to go to school because they don't know what will be unleashed there. And what is being done to address this widespread angst? Our incredible frustrations remind me of this story. Steve Stein goes back to his neighborhood in Cleveland. He had served as a soldier in Vietnam and had not been back to the old neighborhood since. So much had changed in that old Cleveland neighborhood, except that Kleinman's shoe repair is still in business. Stein suddenly remembers that before he went to Vietnam, he left a pair of shoes that he never picked up. Gee, he thought, could they possibly still be there? Kleinman is. And believe it or not, he walked in and there was old Mr. Kleinman, bent over his workspace in his leather apron with one eye nearly shut. Excuse me, Mr. Kleinman, I used to live around the corner. 40 years ago, I left a pair of shoes with you for repair. Is it possible you still have them? Was they black wingtips? Yes, black wingtips, that's what they were. And you wanted a half-sole with rubber heels, right? That's incredible. That's exactly what I wanted. Do you still have them? They be ready Wednesday. So what will happen in our country on Wednesday? Nothing underscores how broken or ineffective our political system is than our inability to debate and pass laws that make the slightest dent in controlling the proliferation of deadly weapons in our country. The debate over whether people should be able to possess handguns, assault rifles with huge magazines, and on. That battle seems to be won by the NRA. In fact, no one even debates the core question of guns in this country. By the way, have you read lately the United States Constitution? I could really become a fan of this Second Amendment. Have you read it? It's very short. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I read English pretty well. I understand modifiers. Am I missing something, or does the Second Amendment only talk about the need for well-regulated militias? not for the right of individuals to bear countless arms to inflict unspeakable destruction anywhere they so choose in the United States of America. Yet carnage continues, and political courage is nowhere to be found. You well know that we're coming up to the one-year anniversary of the horror that took place at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. To compound the pain, that shul has not been and may never be reopened. Their shofar blower and many key members were slaughtered. As commemoration, we're offering a great program on anti-Semitism on October 30th, and I hope you'll attend. You remember that horrible time. Were we afraid to enter our own synagogue after the Tree of Life tragedy? Just the opposite. We flocked here in numbers approaching tonight, understanding that the synagogue is the place to come to feel the security of community, to sense the presence of God, to be an ally against hatred of all kinds. We are the descendants of Gunther Hirschberg and will stand tall in the face of those who would choose for us not to stand at all. That is why we continue to enhance our security, which you cannot help but notice as you enter our beautifully refurbished lobby. We shall come to Rodeph Sholom to celebrate our faith and heritage because this is our home and no one will dislodge us from our home. And we shall insist in this home that bigotry does not accrue to any people, race, ethnicity, or sexual orientation. We will stand up whether voices of hate come from the left, right, or even the Oval Office in Washington. Speaking of her father, Abraham Joshua Heschel, his daughter Susanna once wrote, "My father used to remind us that the Holocaust did not begin with the building of crematoria. Hitler did not come to power with tanks and guns. It all began with uttering words of defamation and propaganda. Words create worlds," he used to tell me. This, pray tell, is not Nazi Germany. But anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist, racist, and homophobic words are the poison that can seep into constitutional protections and undermine this country's greatness and goodness. Our words create worlds, too, when people are either embraced or shunned. I want to reiterate a reading I showed you on Rosh Hashanah, Harold Schurweiss, in the beginning of that Machzor. And he said, Christianity marks Anno Domini, the year of our Lord, the birth of Jesus, Son of God. Muslims begin their calendar in 622 AD, celebrating Muhammad's flight from Mecca to Medina. But the Jewish calendar does not celebrate the birth of a Jewish savior, nor a particular historical event. The calendar doesn't even celebrate the birth of Judaism. No, we celebrate the birth of the world and of humanity. It is a universal vision. We are created in the image of God precisely so that we can take care of all peoples and our planet as if God actually were walking among us. Now, we're not doing a particularly good job at either. But we are heartened by the fact that Jewish values, Jewish living, can put us in touch with that mission, can bring out the best version of yourself, can make you proud of who you are becoming. So on this sacred night, let us declare that they cannot intimidate us or dissuade us from our sacred task. And on this sacred night, let us say to each other, let's do it. Let's live as proud Jews. Let us reclaim practices that have slipped away just beyond our grasp. Come and be inspired by Friday night services. Continue Shabbat with dinner on the 5th floor, or get together with friends for Shabbat dinner, even at a local restaurant. Do mitzvah day and mitzvot throughout the year. Spread the word about what being part of this amazing community can do for those in search and need. To that end, take a look at our beautiful mosaics outside in the lobby. Take a look at the solitary diamonds making their way into the synagogue, into Jewish life. They may be you. They may be your child or somebody's child, searching, looking for purpose, for meaning, for community. If all of us open our hearts and extend our arms, they will feel much better about coming home to their heritage and identity. Judaism teaches that courage comes from purpose. Our Torah, our faith, our Reformed Judaism demand that we look beyond the border of our own personal and parochial concerns and work to ensure the safety, opportunity, and well-being of our fellow human beings. As Elie Wiesel reminded us, the mission of the Jew is not to make the world more Jewish. The mission of the Jew is to make the world more human. And may we always be worthy of this courageous woman who chose Judaism. I began this journey because I loved one Jew. Now I love not only the man I chose to marry, but also the Jewish people. Where they go, I will go. If that means estrangement and exile, I choose to be the stranger and the exile with them. I left my family's traditions to be at one with you. I will not lie saying it has been or will be easy. So if sitting across the room at some dinner you see this face so different from those all around me because of my Irish grandparents, I am not a guest or mere sympathizer. I belong there. Your tragedies of old and of today are mine. I take them as I take the Simchot, the land of Israel, mitzvot, Shabbat in all its glory, now that I've walked so proudly over the line. I take the name Ruth as mine. On this most meaningful day, you are my Naomi. May I and my children be worthy parents of the Redeemer of Israel. We welcome you, Ruth, to a people that refuses to go away, to a people with resolve that no matter how often they tried to bring us low, how often they tried to plunge us into darkness, we summoned the courage to overcome, to bring the light of God's love, the hope for human betterment into our world. No matter how often they have sought our death, we will now and always choose life.